mentioned in the last video that we have been having consistent issues with that top loading fridge, and we had thought that it was a voltage issue, but I was wrong. What it turned out to be was two things, actually three things. It's a very old refrigerator. It's original to the boat, so the fridge is over 20 years old, and we don't know when it was serviced last. So I did call a technician out, and I had the technician evacuate the lines and recharge it so that I knew that it was holding pressure in the system, and we didn't have a leak anywhere. But while we were doing that, we pulled off the old compressor controller, and we checked the compressor, and it's very easy to do. Here's a picture of the compressor connection where the controller connects to it. It's 3 pins, and all you have to do is take a multimeter and check continuity between all 3 pins. And as long as you have continuity between all of those pins, or any 2 of those 3 pins, you know the compressor's good. At least the windings are good in the compressor. It's not guaranteed that the compressor won't be going out sometime soon, but it does tell you that the windings in the compressor are good. So that led me to replacing the compressor controller. Very easy thing to do. I'll show you here in a minute how if you mark the lines and take a picture of it before you disconnect anything, all you have to do is pop it off. There's one screw that attaches right here on the face. And this is just a push connector on those compressor pins. So you just pop that off by hand and unplug the old one, plug the new one in, and stick it back on. What we found out, and I'll show you this, what we found out is you see I put a jumper right here. That's from the thermostat. After we replaced that controller, what we found is that the thermostat was bad, and I figured that out only because after we got the compressor controller back on, it was running a little inconsistently. Some days it would cool, some days it wouldn't. So I just took this jumper wire that I made with a couple of alligator clips, and I jumped off the thermostat, and all of a sudden the compressor ran non-stop, and it will run like that as long as I have the switch on. So the project today is to replace the thermostat that is currently mounted right there. Sorry, the lighting's not great, but that's the thermostat, and it has this capillary tube that runs from a thermostat. Has this capillary tube that runs from the thermostat through the bulkhead into the cold box. That capillary tube's filled with gas, and this is a mechanical thermostat that simply reacts to the expansion and contraction of that gas. This is a kind of a rudimentary temperature control for the box. They do have an electronic unit that you can set a temperature with, probably much more accurate and a lot more reliable. Problem is, it's about 4 times more expensive than this one, and it requires its own independent 12 volt source. I didn't want to have to mess with running another electrical wire down here, so scratch that idea. I'm just going back with the mechanical thermostat, and we'll see how that does. If that works, maybe later on I can replace it with the electronic thermostat. But I'm thinking that this capillary tube runs all the way over here. It's about a foot from here to here. So I'm going to move this over here, give it a little bit shorter run. That means I can get more of that capillary tube inside the cold box, and that might help with some of my issues. I'm not sure, but I'm guessing that this thermostat is simply bad because like I said, now that I have now that I have it jumped off there with those green alligator clips, the thing runs just fine. So this is the thermostat, or I'm sorry. So this is the compressor controller that we swapped out. It just has this little push connector that goes onto the pins on the side of the compressor. To check the compressor's continuity, all you have to do is put a multimeter between the 3 pins that go into this connector. And as long as you have continuity between any 2 of those 3 pins, actually all 2 of those 3 pins, your compressor's good. At least the windings are good, and it should run. It's not a bad idea to have a spare compressor controller, because these do go out from time to time. They're not cheap, but if you look, you can find them on eBay, Amazon. Not sure I would buy one off of eBay, but you can buy them off of Amazon. New C-Cop compressor controller. The one that came off of our unit was actually discontinued, and they had a new model number. So if you're having a hard time finding the model number for your particular unit, do a little research. You can probably find an updated model number that'll work. The thermostat, this is the mechanical thermostat that I was just talking about. Pretty simple. It's got this capillary tube in here that we're going to replace, and 2 wires that go down to the compressor controller. So hopefully, with any luck at all, we're going to get that on today, and our fridge is going to be working again. Okay, so I got the thermostat unmounted. This is the capillary tube. It looks like it's in pretty bad shape, so I'm guessing that thing has probably leaked down over the years. I don't see any obvious kinks or breaks, but you just never know. That is such a small tube. Anyway, the line is routed behind the sink, along the bulkhead back here, behind the back behind the sink there, and then over right here to the module. So I'm going to get my camera, take a quick picture just so I know where everything is, and then we'll start mounting up the new one. So one thing I noticed about this thing is that if I mount it where I want to, see if I can show you. If I mount it where I want to, which is right over here, you can't see the numbers that are on the bottom of the dial. I looked in the instruction manual to see if it would be okay to mount it sideways, and they recommend not doing that. You have to mount it upright. And what it says in the manual is if you're mounting it where you can't see the bottom of the dial with the numbers, you can write the numbers on the side of the dial. Now, why in the world they wouldn't just print the numbers on the side of the dial and on the face is beyond me, but I got my marker, and I'm going to take a couple of minutes and just mark the dials so I can read it without having to bend over and look at the bottom of the thermostat. New thermostat is in. It was a little bit of a trick because the thermostat is run through the side of the cabinet behind the box, and it's about 6 inches back in there, 6 or 7 inches back in there. And for some reason, they covered up the hole with epoxy. So I had to get a long drill bit, drill a small hole, and then I used some rod to, let's see, I went up to the hardware store and got this piece of rod, and was able to stick it in the hole back into the cabinet, tape the new sensor to the end of the rod, and pull it into the cabinet, and it's now safely tucked underneath the shelf here. I'm going to have to secure it a little bit better than it is, but we now have a new thermostat. Let's see if we can see it without the light. I've got the new thermostat mounted right up here, running through the wall, a little bit shorter run through the cabinet. Still have to zip tie the line down to the controller. Time to see if this thing works now. Let's go flip the switch and see what happens. Power's on. I hear some life. And the compressor's running. Oh yeah, I like it. We have a working fridge. Outstanding. Oh, I love it when it works. So the result is an ice cold box. Ice cold. So happy with that. I'm going to let it run. I'm going to let it run for a bit, and we'll check the temperature together here after it's run for a couple hours. Keep our fingers. So the fridge has been so far, and while we're waiting to see if it's going to cool down to where I want it, we thought we'd take care of one more project on the boat. There's no lighting in the cockpit of the boat. So I wanted to find some lights that would work, and Sea Dog makes these low profile LED day-night lights. 135 lumens white, 25 lumens in red. It's only a 1/4 inch thick, and they're push button. So should be fairly simple. I'm going to mount them on the side of the pedestal up in the cockpit, so that when we need light up there, we can just push a button and get a little bit of light. It's a really good quality light. The circuit board is covered in silicone or epoxy. Push button's right in the middle. It's got a lens that snaps over the top of it. Should be a fairly straightforward installation. Just have to run a power line up to the pedestal that I can use to power these. But we're going to take care of that right now while we're waiting on the fridge to cool down. Changed my mind a little bit. Instead of putting it on the side of the pedestal, I looked down in my engine bay, and I've got space to mount them right here. I'm going to put one here, and then one directly opposite on the other side. And that should make it a little bit more convenient for everybody to use. Very low profile, they're only about a 1/4 inch thick, so shouldn't interfere with anybody. I'm thinking that's a perfect spot for it right there. Here we go.
Home to Norway after a first round 81, 40-41. Didn't kiss the 30s on either side. Then battling injuries. What happens? On the range this morning and something clicks. He felt better. He went out and shot. Ready for this? Course record 62. That's a 19-shot difference. And now he's playing the weekend. One tweak, one turn of the screw, slight changing. Today was just unbelievable. So many putts. I have no idea how many feet I've rolled, but it's been quite the day.
What's even more of an eye-opener is in contrast to what you did yesterday. How do you describe the 81, 62?
Scotty Scheffler ranks here, Trip.
Yeah, you look at this, right? The tee to green, there's no beer right now. And you added one to low. This course management, hitting the right shot at the right time.
Before you use AI to transform business, accelerate growth, and more comfort for everyone, but we still left room for all the unexpected things you'll find out here.
Push for the NBA playoffs. The Astros have been a powerhouse the last number of years. They opened against the Yankees yesterday in Houston and lost in a thriller. Speaking of baseball,
Lights are all mounted up. I think they look pretty good. Got one on either side. It's just that little white push button in the middle that switches them on and off, and red to white. I think it's going to light up the cockpit pretty well. So now all we have to do is finish the wiring behind the electrical panel. We have a fuse block already here for us with an empty spot. I'm going to go right to that one, and I'm going to run the line down right into the engine bay right there in the corner, and then we'll get the light's wired up. So I'm gonna run the line right down with those along here, and back here in the corner I can see light from the engine bay right through there. Try that light and see if it works. Oh, look at that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Look at that. They both work. Push it again.
I didn't know they were going to be red.
They're white
That's
or red.
Cool.
Turn it on one more time.
All right.
Look at that. It works. This one works too. Push it again. It works.
That's cool.
Another project on Aeronautical complete. On this boat, we have a mechanical thermostat. We started down the process of elimination to make sure that we weren't making a mistake. You can check the compressor continuity very simply with a multimeter, and just making sure that the 4 pins on the side of the compressor have continuity. You do that by removing the control box, the compressor controller. It's very simple. It's just a push pin connector. You take one screw off, pull it off the side of the compressor, and then with your fingers or with maybe a wooden dowel or something, you can pop that off the pins, and then just check continuity between all 3 of the pins. And if you have continuity, more than likely your compressor's still good. The next thing I wanted to make sure of was that we didn't have a leak in the system somewhere, so I hired a technician to come out and evacuate the lines and recharge it, and it held pressure. So I knew that the compressor and the lines were still good. Now, the one thing that could have been an issue is that it has a small expansion tube. I'm going to point that out to you in the line that's used as a moisture filter. It is on, let me get a light. Where'd my light go? I have a light somewhere. Let's see what I can do to find you some light. Do this. So on this Frigiboat system that I have, and it's an older system that came with the boat. It's not even a current system. I wouldn't be able to replace this one. I could replace the condenser, the compressor, and I can replace the control box because those are all fairly standard. But if you look right back here in the line is this larger tube. It's a moisture filter for the capillary, or for the feed lines. You've got a high pressure and a low pressure, high pressure side, and this is a filter that can get contaminated, and if it does, then you might as well just replace the whole system, because you can't easily replace that. Probably not even worth it, because they're only going to last maybe 10-15 years. This one, I'm fortunate, has been on the boat. It's got a date on it of 2004, I believe. So it's almost original to the boat. I'm guessing that maybe they had some type of a warranty issue with the original one. They took it back to the factory and they had this one installed as a replacement. But anyway, we checked all the lines. The lines held pressure. I checked continuity on the compressor, and it was good. So I had a spare compressor controller. I swapped that out. There's one screw right here. You remove that screw, and then it pops off the side, and there's a push pin connector. There's 3 pins on the side of the compressor down here, and you just pry that off with your fingers, and then check continuity between the 3 pins on the compressor. And as long as you have continuity between any 2 of those 3, all 2 of those 3 pins, your windings are good in your compressor. So I replaced this, and then what I did was I jumpered between. I jumpered out the thermostat. So this is the new thermostat up here now, which is working fantastic, as you can tell. But what I did was to eliminate, or to determine if that was an issue, was I jumpered between C and T, and that eliminates the thermostat from the system. And as soon as I did that and put power back to the system, it ran, and it ran for 24 hours. So I knew it was a thermostat issue. So ordered a new thermostat. It was about $50 to get that. Installed it just now, as you see, and voila, we have our fridge back, and life is good.